If you've spent any time around old Mercedes cars, you already know how this usually goes. Half the internet will tell you to run away from any cheap Mercedes-Benz. The other half will tell you old Mercedes cars were built better than almost anything on the road today. And honestly, both sides are right, because some old Mercedes models are absolute disasters once they get cheap. Too much tech, too many expensive failure points, too much neglected maintenance. But a few of them still make real sense. Not because they're perfect, not because they're cheap to repair like a Corolla, and definitely not because every single example is worth buying. They make sense because the right versions have proven drivetrains, predictable weak points, and that old-school Mercedes feeling people still miss today. So in this video, I'm not talking about every cheap Mercedes you can buy. I'm talking about 3 dirt-cheap Mercedes models you can still buy in 2026 that are actually worth considering, the kinds of cars that mechanics and longtime owners still respect as long as you buy smart. And yes, that last part matters, because with old Mercedes cars, the model matters, but the engine matters even more. Let's start with number 3, Mercedes-Benz W204. If you want the cheapest Mercedes on this list that still feels modern enough to use every day, the W204C300 is one of the smartest places to start. This is the compact Mercedes from the era before everything became too digital, too soft, and too overcomplicated. It still feels like a real Mercedes. The doors feel solid, the interior has that old-school German tightness, and the car is simple enough that it doesn't feel intimidating to own. And the reason I'm not saying just buy any W204 is because that would be bad advice. The good one is the C300, not the smaller turbo 4-cylinder, not the version people buy because it looks newer. The C300. Why? Because even inside the Mercedes enthusiast world, the W204C300 has a reputation for being one of the safer bets, while the turbocharged C250 is often the one people warn you about. MB World Threads repeatedly describe the W204C300 as reliable and easy to work on, while warning that the C250's M271 Evo engine can suffer from timing chain stretch, turbo issues, and fuel pump problems. Edmunds also notes that a well-maintained used C-Class from this era generally holds up well over time. That's exactly why this car makes the list. This is the Mercedes you buy when you want the badge, the feel, and the comfort, but you don't want to gamble on the wrong engine. Now, is it perfect? No. Common age-related issues still show up. Motor mounts, suspension wear, small oil leaks, electrical annoyances, steering or alignment issues on neglected cars. And if you buy a badly maintained one, it can still become a headache. But the point is, the core car is good. The C300 is one of those rare cheap Mercedes models where the car feels expensive enough to enjoy, but still simple enough to justify. It's comfortable, quiet enough, good-looking, and mature in the way that cheaper modern cars often aren't. If you want a dirt-cheap Mercedes that still feels like a proper entry into the brand, the W204C300 is one of the best values out there. 2. Mercedes-Benz CLK 500. Now this one is a little different, because the CLK 500 is not the obvious choice. It's not the one everyone talks about first. It's not the one younger buyers search for. And that's exactly why it gets overlooked. But if you understand old Mercedes engine history, the CLK 500 starts to make a lot of sense. The reason is simple. The older M113 V8, among Mercedes enthusiasts, the older M112 V6 and M113 V8 are widely seen as some of the brand's strongest modern-era engines. On MB World, longtime owners still describe them as extremely reliable, especially compared with later engines that brought more known mechanical risk. That matters a lot, because when people talk about cheap old Mercedes cars being risky, they're usually talking about buying the wrong engine or the wrong transition year car. And this is exactly why the CLK 500 deserves more attention than the CLK 350. MB World Buying Guide discussions specifically warn buyers away from earlier CLK 350 problem years because of the balance shaft issue. And note that early 7-speed 722.9 transmissions can be more troublesome, while the older setups are generally safer bets. That's why the CLK 500 is the smarter play. You get a naturally aspirated V8, old-school Mercedes coupe styling, real comfort, strong highway manners, and one of the better transmission combinations from this era. And because it's a 2-door Mercedes from an older generation, people often assume it's more expensive or more problematic than it actually is. Now, I'm not going to pretend it's cheap to maintain like a Honda. It isn't. You still need to watch for suspension wear. window regulator issues, interior aging, cooling system maintenance, and just the basic reality of owning an older luxury coupe. But this is the kind of Mercedes that feels worth the effort. It still has style, it still feels special, and unlike some later cheap Mercedes models, it's not built around a fragile engine that ruins the whole ownership experience. Even Edmunds consumer reviews for the 2008 CLK class remain extremely positive overall, with a very strong average owner rating, which lines up with why these cars still have a quiet but loyal following. This is the cheap Mercedes you buy when you want something that feels more emotional than a C-Class, but still grounded in one of the more trusted old Mercedes powertrains. 1. Mercedes-Benz W211. If you ask a lot of experienced Mercedes owners which cheap old Mercedes still makes sense, the W211 E-Class keeps coming up again and again. And the reason is not that every W211 is good, because they're not. The reason is that the right W211 is still one of the best old-school Mercedes values on the market. And by right W211, I mean the cars with the older M112 V6 or M113 V8, the engines that Mercedes people still trust. This is where you need to be careful, because the W211 range has some traps. MB World discussions have long warned buyers about the earliest W211 cars, especially the 2003 and early 2004 models, due to the radiator failure issue that could contaminate the transmission. And car complaints shows that some of the worst Mercedes model years on record include the 2006 E350 and 2007 E350, which is exactly why you don't just shop these cars by price. That's why the sweet spot is not the cheapest W211 you can find. The sweet spot is the good engine, good maintenance history, good spec car. When you get that formula right, the W211 becomes incredibly hard to beat for the money, because this is still one of the last Mercedes sedans that feels properly overbuilt. The doors are heavy, the seats are excellent, the ride is calm and mature, the visibility is good, and the whole car has that old Mercedes confidence that newer cars often don't. It's not trying to be flashy. It's not trying to feel futuristic. It just feels expensive in a serious way. That's why people still love them. And that's why they're such a dangerous value on the used market, because you can buy one for surprisingly little money, and if you choose the right one, it still feels like a genuine luxury car, instead of a cheap used car with a premium badge. Now, of course, it's still a W211. So yes, you need to inspect suspension, electronics, cooling system, transmission behavior, service history, and whether someone bought a nice car cheaply and then maintained it like a rental. But here's the difference between the W211 and a lot of other cheap luxury sedans. When it's right, it feels right. And there's a reason MB World owners still keep saying the older M112 and M113 powered W211 cars are the ones to have. They're seen as the dependable core of the range, while later problem combinations are the ones that gave the model its bad reputation. So if you want the best dirt-cheap Mercedes you can buy in 2026, the one that still feels like a real Mercedes and still has a drivetrain, people respect the W211, E320, or E500 is the one I would look for first. Conclusion: cheap Mercedes ownership only makes sense when you stop buying with your eyes and start buying with your brain. That's the whole game. Because yes, you can buy a dirt-cheap Mercedes that ruins your life, but you can also buy one that gives you real comfort, real engineering, real road presence, and years of satisfying ownership. The W204C300 is the smart entry point. The CLK500 is the underrated emotional pick. And the W211E320 or E500 is still the best all-around old-school Mercedes value if you find the right one. None of these cars are for people who want zero maintenance, but all three make sense for people who understand that the best cheap Mercedes is not the newest one. It's the one with the right engine and the right history. And in 2026, that matters more than ever.